Hello and welcome to The Check with Joseki Tech. I'm your host, Adam Studley, and today I have Jared Chase and Toby Bonney with me to talk iGaming and e-commerce. We want to talk about how things are similar, how things are a little different, and what we can learn from each other. So with that, Toby, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi Adam. So my name's Toby Bonney. I'm the founder of CRM Cymru. I've come from 17 years experience within the iGaming sector. 11 of that was focused primarily on CRM. And it's good to be here today.
Thanks, Toby. And Jared, do you want to give us a couple sentences on your background?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Hi, Toby. Jared Chase here. I am Vice President of Marketing and Customer Strategy for Joseki Tech. I bring 20 years of experience to the table, both on kind of partner and brand side. Really grew up in email marketing, targeted marketing world, and also I focus a lot on customer loyalty. So happy to be here and have a chat with you today, Toby.
Sounds great. So, Toby, we all know that casinos in the old days are known for doing personalization. Back when it was simply that they remembered your name and they knew you liked the Jack and Coke when you walked up. So, have they done as things have moved to the digital era? And where is it that you think, the rest of us have things we can learn from you guys?
Good question. So I think from an iGaming perspective, it's as an industry, it's always been quite ahead of the curve. I think over the years I've been within it, I've seen it evolve and develop and grow. But I think what's always been the most important thing has always been that desire to look at the personalization and to look at the customer experience and to basically look at that customer data, whether it's like you said, whether it's what the customer's drinking in a casino, but more, whether from a digital point of view, whether they deposit using a card, whether they deposit using an e-wallet, whether they're playing casino, whether they're playing sports, whether they're playing poker, whether they're playing bingo, what they're wagering or what specific slot they're playing, what sort of experience they're having on the game, whether they're winning, whether they're losing. I think the industry has been very good over the years at getting as much data as physically possible from every customer experience to really tailor the customer's experience and to really try and provide that personalized feel. It's not always been perfect, I'll be honest on that, but as over the years as it's developed, it's really honed in on that data. And I think that's something that I believe a lot of other industries are behind the iGaming industry on. That, I mean, I'm hoping Jared will be able to confirm or deny this, but it feels like a lot of industries, especially from a retail perspective, don't have that heavy data, that heavy analysis, that amount of information available to them to be able to target and offer that personalized experience. Jared?
Yeah, I think there's certainly truth to that, right? And sort of where my head originally went to, Toby, was how much time does a company have to collect data, right? How much time does a consumer participate with your brand enough to collect that data, right? And so I have a retail background, a bit of Fiserv background, a travel background, right? And I'm sure this is true as well in the gaming world, where you have, customers that, maybe show up once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year, right? And, maybe I should just ask the question, just sort of as a kind of comparing customer bases a little bit, like on average, how many interactions, rough, how many visits does a customer have with a gaming company, just sort of off the cuff, right, over the course of a year?
Now that is a very good question. I think the problem you've got, and it's not one I have the answer to, I think the problem you've got is very similar to retail. You're going to get different people who turn up and play a different amount of times. You're going to get from a bingo club perspective, you might get the elder visitor who comes every week to play bingo for that social experience. Alternatively, you might get the sportsbook punter who logs in every weekend for the Premier League. But then likewise, you might also get the casual punter who might log onto their account once a year for the Grand National, and you might get them depositing wage of £5, £10 on an annual basis, and it can be difficult. I do think if you can try and get a customer to make 4 or 5 deposits early on, then you're going to succeed in keeping them and retaining them as a regular customer.
Interesting. Okay. So, and you just said something pretty interesting to me, right? So like one of your KPIs is deposits, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
like loading the wallet so that you can participate and wager whatever kind of, whatever sport or whatever it is that you want to wager on, right?
Yeah.
And the reason I was asking that question too is because a lot of retailers, their average frequency across a year, might be 3 or 4 visits a year. And those are for customers that are, relatively engaged, right? But on the alternative is, if you think of an Amazon or something, right, you're going to have customers that are visiting every single day. So I think like regardless of industry, I think we can kind of draw parallels between super engaged customers from like a daily perspective, and then, customers that aren't so engaged. They may only show up 3-4 times a year. The reality is that the amount of data that you may have, even if you're perfect at collecting it, you have all your cookies tracked, you have all of your webhooks integrated, you can see the customer when they visit their site, you know who it is or when they open the app or whatever, right? Chances are you might only get like 5 or 6 at-bats at that across the period of a year. So I think on one hand, the amount of data in a retail environment, and this is a big generalization, right? But the amount of data compared to a daily gamer is going to be very different. And so just by nature of that, I think the amount of personalization and targeting is going to be different as well. Not to say that it's, it shouldn't be done any more or less diligently than if you had a ton of data, like even more so the importance of getting it right when you only have a select set of information, to ensure that the reach outs are on target, the content is something that's going to resonate with the customer, and the frequency, which is going to be a little bit harder to nail down if you only have kind of 3 or 4 touch points across the year, is right to get that customer to make that next step with you. So I just think it's really interesting in terms of just like volume of information that can be leveraged, right, depending upon the business model.
And I do see with our retail customers, one of the things we have to look out for is, again, with just a handful of sales per year, all your predictive models and your product suggestions can't just be based on the purchase history, because it's not a deep enough data pool. So you then have to look at the shopping history, like what pages they're looking at on the website when they show up with that experience. When you're sending them emails, what are they clicking on, right? We've got these more dribs and drabs of interaction with the brand, as Jared's saying, to draw into to make our predictive model. For gaming, I think there is definitely the advantage that at least for the online players, when they're using your product, right, they're actively online and gambling. So you're getting, it's not just a purchase and they go away. It's an engaged behavior, which I also think why for Jared and I, when you say deposit, again, that's an interesting interaction where, right, the deposit is when they're adding more money into the funnel, much more similar to a purchase, but then you want to actually have them gaming. So are you doing some targeting differently for people that you see that have money on deposit but haven't been gaming recently? Is there some value in exploring those kind of customer segmentations?
I think within gambling, within iGaming, you're looking at all the general segmentation, a similar sort of level to retail. So you're going to have those that just browse. You're going to have those that might create an account but not complete the cart abandonment functionality. You're going to get those that make the one-off deposit and the one-off wager, and you're going to segment and target accordingly. I think there's a lot of targeting that does go on within iGaming where if someone looks at a specific page on a website, you can target accordingly. In the modern world, especially, if you can, for example, if you've got a sports book and they're running a promotion for the Champions League final that took place last week, if just to date this, if you're targeting, if you're looking at someone and they look at promotion for that, then but they've never deposited and they've never wagered, then there's nothing. If they're registered, if they're accessible, if you can target their their desktop. If you get any sort of identifier or any means to communicate with them, and they're eligible for communications. In the UK, you've got to be very, very careful how you target customers in the modern world. But with different countries globally have different rules on communications, as we all know. And as long as you're targeting them within those communications allowances, you can always find ways to look at people and look at what they're viewing on site and trying to get that first deposit over the line, try to get that first touch point engagement and try and convert them into that regular active customer. And I think that is something that, it's similar to the retail side of things. Getting them to deposit and then getting them to wager, those are the two key metrics, absolutely. But they don't have to have just done that in order for you to contact them. It's about the journey. It's about that getting all touch points of that journey from the beginning all the way through their life cycle to maximize that lifetime value for those customers and to really engage them across all points, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think there's a lot, I would imagine there's a lot of similarities in terms of acquisition marketing between retail and gaming, right? Like, I'm sure there's a lot of paid media, right? There's, you have your broad targeted outreach. You're going to have your targeted nurturing campaigns, right? Trying to get them to their first deposit in retail, right? We generally trying to get customers to their first purchase, whether that be in store, online, through app, whatever the sales channel is. So I think there's a lot of similarities there. There's another interesting point that you said, though, that I find interesting is that your kind of first KPI is to make a deposit, right? And then your second KPI is to encourage gambling, right? Encourage wagers. Did I get that right? Is that kind of like how you think about it from a gaming perspective? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's sort of the direction that I heard.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the end of the day, you've got two types of gambling, and you've got those where it's the peer-to-peer side of things. So it's the poker and the bingos where the brand makes money, irrelevant of who wins and loses. And then you've got the other side of things where it's against the house. So you've got the blackjacks, the sports, the slots. Both sides there. The end of the day, the end goal is, well, there's two goals. One is to ensure that the customer has an enjoyable experience, because you want them to be engaged, to keep playing. But the other one, obviously, is you need to make money. It's all very well good having an amazing experience, but if the company isn't making money, there's a problem. And I think that's where the combination of that deposit and the wager come in. I think the key thing is if someone deposits, you can at least when someone's depositing, you can see that they are who they say they are, and it provides you with that extra level of verification. And
that makes sense. So going through the deposit, you basically have to raise your hand and say, this is who I am. And
exactly. You do get some companies that offer no deposit offers. So there are some companies globally where they will say, register an account and get free spins or free bet or anything like that without depositing. But that sort of offer is increasingly scarce in the industry because it's such a dangerous way to go down. And it's a great acquisition piece, but it's so risky being able to see who those people are. At least when you've got the deposit, we'll avoid the potential fraud risks, obviously. But if at least you can see more or less that they're a legitimate customer if they're making that deposit.
Are you worried about age verification and stuff like that? Well, what's the concern, right? Because on one hand, it's, hey, let's get them in the mix. We gave them a few free wagers, free spins, whatever it might be, to participate. I'm sure there's laws that that everyone needs to abide by. So we need to make sure you're above a certain age, right? Of gambling age or whatnot. At least that's the way it is in the States, right? So
yeah.
I'm curious about what other kind of concerns you might have at that point.
So absolutely right about age verification. I mean, there tends to be two ways of companies doing it. One way is some companies will use third-party systems to check for age verification on registration. Some companies, though, do it used based upon the deposit method. So that's where depositing becomes an additional point.
I understand what you're saying now. Okay. Gotcha.
But yeah, there's a wide range of data you want to look. And this is where responsible gambling is so important, and it's where it comes into the fold. And this is something that I'm not entirely sure how it would migrate towards retail. But it's our responsible gambling. It's such a buzzword within the industry nowadays, and it's so fundamentally important. And it's so easy to check. It's so easy to monitor using the data that's available to you. But when people first register, especially within the UK, when they first register, if it's most legitimate licensed companies, in fact, I think it's all, are legally obliged to use GamStop. Now, GamStop is one of many really solid RG tools. But what it'll do is if a customer is registered with GamStop, sites will block that customer instantly for being a problem gambler. And it's about using this sort of data.
I see.
To be able to track.
Do not call list, if you will, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That's a really good way of looking at it. Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And yeah, there's a plethora of different ways of verifying and checking and looking for all these criteria to make sure that basically people are in control, they're not fraudulent, and that they're someone you want on board, effectively.
So to encourage our customers, we have our techniques. And you mentioned a few of them, Toby, around deposit bonuses or free spins. So I know on retail we have a list of tricks, and usually it's coupon related. So we have, price drops, we have buy one, get ones, we have points back, right? If you have a loyalty program, maybe you're giving a discount not on this purchase, but on a future purchase. So are there any other big tools we're using from a coupon perspective, Jared, that you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, I think from, just from a purely acquisition focus, I think you hit the key items there, right? You got product, you got price. I think it's really important, right, to be leveraging whatever content that we have at that early kind of engagement onboarding stage, right? So if they visited the site, what type of content did they look at? Let's make sure that we're personalizing or targeting based on the appropriate content, right? But you hit the main things, right? Like it's product, it's price, is loyalty from an offer standpoint, right? But then, I think content, right? Content is king. Over the years, I've done lots of different tests from acquisition kind of perspective. What's going to get this customer to engage with us? And really, like before they're a customer, like giving them valuable content, right? That's exciting, that encourages them, hopefully educates them about your company, your program, the value that you deliver is really critical at the early stages. And Toby, I would imagine that a lot of that is sort of similar in gaming as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as long as you need a solid product. There's a wide, and it doesn't matter what you offer. If you offer free spins, free bets, cashback, loyalty, bonusing of any kind, insurance, you name it. If the product isn't up to scratch, then it's not going to work. If someone logs on and has a bad experience or looks at the site and thinks, what is this? Then it doesn't matter what you offer them. You're never going to get that long-term value customer. And any customer worth their salt is more or less going to walk away if they see a really bad product anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think I was gonna ask a question, Toby. I think if we kind of move from getting customers into the funnel and whatnot, right? We kind of move towards engagement, and I'm fascinated by the hard problems to solve in our space, and I think that gaming companies specifically have so much data, right? And especially let's just think of your loyalists, right? People who are really into gaming. Maybe they're into multiple different sports, different activities. Maybe they're into poker and other things, right? Like this person is a gamer, right? So, and you see them daily, right? There's so much to talk to the customer about. You can go in so many different directions. And I imagine your models are fighting with one another, but help us understand kind of how you make some of those tough calls, right? And what some of your kind of prioritization experience has been with trying to decide what's the best thing to send to this customer who has such a rich data set.
Good question. I think there's different ways you can handle it. So you can look at it from a calendar point of view. So you can look at the events, very very similar very similar to retail in a way, with where you get events. I know in the UK it's Father's Day in a few weeks, and if you've got events like that, I mean, don't get me wrong, you're not going to use Father's Day as a target for iGaming. I know, but as an analogy of the sort of events that are coming up, it works. But yeah, sporting events that come up, you can target according to that, and you can look at what they're playing to offer them something based around that.
So seasonal targeting is very
to a degree.
It's still very active. It makes sense.
Yeah, but you can
horse races only happen, or the big horse races, or the big golf events, right? Or the major championships of whatever sport it might be, right? They only happen so often. So there's a total like seasonal focus there, or event based.
Yeah, but I mean,
event-based focus there as well. Yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely, but I think you can also look at what someone's doing, and the beautiful thing with the modern world is AI. And I think when you get a really good AI model, I'm not going to name drop specific CRM platforms, but we know some of the examples ourselves. If you get a really good CRM platform, they can use AI algorithms nowadays to really identify and cherry pick the best customer to receive the best communications at the best time. And yeah, with the more data you feed into that model, the easier it is to be able to identify those customers with what you want to offer them based upon that, through granular segmentation and through granular targeting. So that's another way of doing it. So it's a sort of a hodgepodge hybrid affair, looking at a plethora of different options effectively.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I would imagine that some of the indicators or influencers that are deciding what to, does golf beat soccer or football, right? Like, I would imagine some of those key things that it's looking at are, obviously profitability, long-term customer value, right? I sports gamble a little bit myself, and I've even fallen into the, hey, you're not really good at this. We feel bad for you. Here's a kickback.
I love those emails.
Here's a kickback bucket, right? And my point of mentioning that is that like customer satisfaction has to be a critical element. I feel like in the gaming prioritization and algorithm piece, because if someone's having a miserable time, they're not coming back. So
yeah,
I find that fascinating that you guys have a lot of different kind of levers to play with.
Yeah. They also have the advantage of knowing you're such a bad bettor. If they give you a few free bets, you're likely to lose them anyway.
No, they literally gave me $25. They're like, hey, here's $25. Use it any which way. And I lost it instantly. I don't gamble anymore. I try every now and then. But Toby, I fall into all right, in the horse racing world, because that's been brought up, like there's a couple of big events here in the States every year. Like I'll usually have fun with my kids. Everyone picks out a horse. We do it, right? Like we fall into the every now and then gambler bucket type of thing. But yeah, no, it's there's so much data. I think I have one other question too around just like the plethora of data across the gaming world. Is that, do you ever run into challenges? It's just like, there's like data overload. What do I do? Like there's so much to listen to. How do you parse it? How do you stay focused on the core elements? How does that influence your targeting and your target group creation? Your lists that you're pulling. There's just a lot out there, right? Like keeping it simple, right? Just from a pure operations and kind of management perspective, and keeping the marketing machine humming. I imagine that can kind of prevent some challenges too, is like having to pick your battles. Like, all right, we can't dive into this element right now. We just need to kind of stay here or something like that, right? Does that come up often, or?
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised. I think if you've got a solid strategy in place, if you know what your KPIs are, what you're trying to target, some companies will prioritize one sport over another, or one event, or some companies will prefer to get their punters playing sports. Some will prefer to play casino. It'll vary and depends entirely on the company strategy. If you've got that to hand and you know what you're trying to achieve, then obviously it's easier to filter out some of that data. But again, if you've got a really good platform, if you've got a really good system that allows you to go unbelievably granular, then there's nothing to stop you from using all that data to have 5 people in an email campaign on a daily basis, or to hit that one player who likes football, tennis, and golf in one go. The more data you've got, the more you can use it, and the more sophisticated your modeling can be. But it can cause headaches. You're absolutely right. When you've got so much data that you don't know what to do with it. But that's part of the fun. That's CRM, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the enjoyment.
That's where we live, right?
Yeah.
So I think we covered a lot of interesting topics today. So thanks, Toby. Thanks, Jared. This has been the Check with Joseki Tech, and we hope you learned something today. Thanks.
Cheers, guys. It's been good.
Thank you.